Now, turning to our program today, I have the pleasure of introducing our speakers for Veterans Day program. First, you will hear from Rotarian Dan Buttery. Dan is a strategic, mission-focused leader with over 20 years of experience serving veterans in our community. He currently serves as president and CEO of the War Memorial Center in Milwaukee, our home. And prior to that, he served as founder and past president of the Fisher House, Wisconsin, assistant deputy secretary of the Wisconsin Department of Veterans Affairs. Dan was commissioned as an officer in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and went on to become company commander of C Company, 724 Engineering Battalion, U.S. Army National Guard in 2001. His combat company successfully conducted 300 missions in Iraq. Thank you, Dan, so much for your service, in which he was awarded the Bronze Star Medal. He will be followed by Chuck Konsitzke, hope I got that right, Associate Director of the University of Wisconsin-Madison Biotechnology Center and the team lead for UW's Missing in Action Recovery and Identification Project. Chuck's family and extended family have served over 300 years within the military and participated in over dozens of conflicts spanning from the Korean War up to the latest conflicts. Chuck, thank you also for your service. He founded the UW MIA project in 2015 to recover, identify, and repatriate MIA U.S. service members by conducting annual field excavations and year-round research assistance to families of missing service members. This project consists of an interdisciplinary team of academic experts, student volunteers, and in the fields of history, archaeology, forensic anthropology, imagine that, forensic anthropology, and biology, collaborating to make these missions possible and to make these missions a success. So please welcome Dan and Chuck to the stage. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karen. It's an honor to be here today, fellow Rotarians. What I'd like to do is take you through a brief story and a path, not only about the Veterans Day legacy, but also this building that you're in. We're actually celebrating the 65th anniversary this Veterans Day of this building opening to the public. You'll learn here briefly why I invited Chuck to join us, because it's a complete linkage to what we're trying to do as we grow and expand the programs that serve our veteran and our veteran community. But just before I get into that, I'd love to do a high-level touch. Could you please stand if you are a veteran of our United States Armed Forces? A round of applause, please, for our veterans. Thank you. Oftentimes there's confusion on, especially on the civilian side, veteran, military, the symbolism. It's important to understand whether the battles and the generations, we are grounded in tradition. Everything that we do in the U.S. Armed Forces has symbolism. You could almost look at it as a faith, like the symbolism of faith and the traditions, all the way down to the uniforms that we wear, the way that we interact with each other. And whether you are Army, as I was, or Marine, Semper Fi Marine, or Navy, any branch of service, there's all the symbolism that is everywhere. And believe it or not, when this building was built, there is an extreme amount of symbolism that was incorporated into this structure. And there's certain iconic things that you will note. Those of you with architectural and design backgrounds, you see it from a structural component. But the reason why I really wanted to start with Eero Saarinen, this is actually a section from the CIA Museum website where they referred to him as irreplaceable. Not only coming here and starting to work on the strategic plan and working towards the opening of our new Medal of Honor exhibit, we really wanted to touch on the fact that this is the 65th anniversary this year. Of course, the mission has not changed: honor the dead, honor our fallen, serve the living. But what does that mean? Well, that really opened it up for a lot of components. But when he was approached to design this, actually his father was the original architect. This is actually an image taken from the very first brochure that was designed by Mr. Saarinen. And as you can see, the airstrip where Summerfest grounds are now, the rail line behind it, But what he wanted to do was build out 200 yards in front of the War Memorial where they could actually have citizens of this great state and city stand and look at the distance that those young men had to traverse on June 6, 1944, when they were taking the beaches at Normandy. You can better see it now. That's why this is actually has symbolism of a bunker. It was a pillbox from Normandy. They also wanted to kick it out further because there's the cultural aspects and elements. The Marcus Center was actually going to be built right out over here. But they never built it that far. They didn't fill that far. They didn't fill that much land in. So they went with it. The art museum has always been incorporated as part of this because the argument was we don't go to war just to defeat and destruct. That's all. Unfortunately, that's a byproduct. We go to defend what we have back home. And we go to defend the freedom of speech, the freedom of religion, and in what everybody in this room did today, and to vote. And that's why they wanted art and symbolism built into this memorial. It wasn't just about remembering those who were killed in action. Sarnin took that all into effect. As I said, he interviews 4 D-Days who hit the beaches on June 6th. One of them is still alive, and we actually had an interview that I did with him a few years ago to touch on that. As I mentioned, part of the OSS that he served as a director. This was a situation room. It was one of the first boardrooms ever concepted. He did that for the State Department. He understood the interaction of humans in the space and the work that they're in. So you can also see a number of the elements in this one. Most everybody in this room probably recognizes that, the Nuremberg trial room. He designed that room. He took a wall down. He opened it up. He actually punched holes in the walls so cameras could be looking in and viewing in because he knew this is one of the most important points of our post-World War II conflict. Evil that was seated right there, the Nazis, and the oversight of the GI freedom. We have freedom, and we will always overlook and defeat evil. Sarnin laid that room out so as those cameras were taking shots, the videos were being run, that we as a nation would never forget what that was and what happened with that. So you can get a better appreciation of all the things that he has worked on. This is just a list of some of the many items that he did. The most iconic, the Arch in St. Louis. The embassy in London, which they just recently closed, mostly for safety reasons. The international airport at Dulles. And today, you can, if you fly through JFK and you go to the hotel, the TWA hotel, the wings of that terminal. And believe it or not, when Calatrava came here, there's an article that talks about Calatrava and Sarnin's influence on him. There are elements of the Calatrava in the TWA terminal at JFK right here. You'll see it in some of the window and the features that Calatrava was tipping his hat to Mr. Sarnin. But I want to bring it now to Veterans Day and what we were doing. We were approached last year, 18 months ago, by Medal of Honor recipient Gary Welch, and they said, Dan, whatever happened to that Medal of Honor exhibit that we were working on? And one of the things that we wanted to be very careful with is we wanted to respect and honor the features and the characteristics of this building that Mr. Sarnin designed and built into this structure. So we have the 160th anniversary this year of Wisconsin's action that led to the first Medal of Honor recipient. So that actually was one of the reasons what brought us to what's on the L2. It's still a walkthrough. The art museum offices are behind that. So we needed to make sure we maintain that walkthrough, that ability to move through. The tiles on the wall, each of those tiles, school groups, when they come through, they interact with it, they touch it. Then you have the interactive database that's there on that screen. So you can learn about every single one of our 64 recipients going back 160 years. We wanted that to hit this year on the 65th anniversary of this building opening because of the symbolism. As I mentioned before, we veterans, we military, we believe in symbolism and have the iconic reasons of the why. Now what I'd like to do is just touch on some of the characteristics that you may know and be familiar with. Got to catch up on my notes here. I could probably do this from memory, but I want to make sure I don't miss a couple of these points. Wisconsin is only one of 2 states that have a father-son Medal of Honor recipient. Arthur MacArthur Jr. and Douglas MacArthur, that we know as the general of the armies. Arthur Sr. was actually Wisconsin's 4th governor. He was an immigrant from Scotland, and he moved to Wisconsin. But the son, at the ripe age of 16, enlisted in the United States Wisconsin unit during the Civil War. That was Arthur MacArthur. And by the age of 18, Arthur led the Wisconsin 24th Infantry Charge on Missionary Ridge at the Battle of Chattanooga, Tennessee, where the colors appeared to fall. Civil War, there are Medal of Honor recipients who will carry the colors and they will receive a Medal of Honor because they either capture the flag. Is during the Civil War a movement, a troop movement. We don't have comms. We don't have the headsets like our special forces guys have all that. They're following those colors, and you will either win or lose a battle if those colors drop. 2 targets on the battlefield of the Civil War and prior: somebody on a horse and somebody carrying that flag. Of course, you're pretty important. If you're carrying that flag, you're just as important. And just as those colors appeared to drop, and they're trying to go up this hill on Missionary Ridge, that color guide was shot, and Arthur MacArthur scoops it up, turns back to the rest of the group and says, "On Wisconsin," and charge up, and he rallies the 24th Infantry. Now, no historian can verify that "On Wisconsin" was actually coined by Arthur MacArthur. However, Douglas MacArthur said that is true, and he would repeat that over and over and over again. He said, because my father told me that was the case. Well, I'm not going to argue against it. So when you argue "On Wisconsin," that was actually started by one of your own, Arthur MacArthur, during the Battle of the Civil War, one of our Medal of Honor recipients. By the way, he was 18 years old when he did that. The real Top Gun, and I had to build this in just because of the movie and everything that was happening recently. Ace of Aces, Richard Ira Bong, born on September 24th, 1920 in Superior. As a kid, at the age of 8, he would watch these planes fly over his family farm. You got to imagine, 1928. It's not like today where you got Mitchell Field and they're flying out constantly. Those planes were delivering the mail in 1928 to Calvin Coolidge. He actually had the White House for the summer was actually just outside of Superior, Wisconsin. And the mail was being flown in to the president as he was visiting. And that's when Ira Bong was just so enamored by that flight. Well, he takes it upon himself, and even before World War II begins, he joins the civilian aviation program, and eventually, when the war breaks out, he is sent to the Army Air Corps Aviation as a cadet, where he was instructed by Captain Barry Goldwater, later Senator and U.S. presidential candidate. But he became an expert in flying the P-38. In fact, World War I ace Eddie Rickenbacker had 26 kills. They were surpassed by Bong in January of 1944. He was sent home, Ira Bong, to sell war bonds and train future pilots. And returning to the war, he was only to continue training other and not seek combat. Well, he didn't listen. In December of 1944, so from January to December, Major Bong had his 40th confirmed kill and received the Medal of Honor. No other pilot has ever even gotten close to that. That's why he was known as the Ace of Aces. And in fact, in this image, you have 2 Wisconsinites, Douglas MacArthur, issuing the Medal of Honor to Ira Bong while he was still in the Pacific Theater. Now, on a sad note of this, he was sent home to become a test pilot. They wanted to keep their Medal of Honor heroes alive. And on the same day that we dropped the very first bomb on Japan, he's in a jet that failed. They still did not have the ejection seats built into the planes, and he did not want to just jump out and let it crash because it was still over a civilian population. He stayed in that plane long enough. I get a little teary-eyed when I get to this point. He stayed in that plane long enough to navigate it over the heights of those homes before he then attempted to jump, and it was too low. He was killed on August 6th, 1945. And so if you look back at the papers that day, it doesn't matter. LA, New York, they all knew Ira Bong was. They talk about the bomb, and there's a side note. He was killed. This is actually the summer lodge where Calvin Coolidge would stay that summer that influenced. I want to call attention to also the Decorating Our Heroes exhibit and just touch on it very briefly. Some of you have gone through that. I'd really like to if you get a chance to go back through that, check out Lieutenant Ellen Ainsworth's story. And here's why. She's only one of 8 women in the history of the United States military to have received the Silver Star. And again, I can't go through her story because I get too teary-eyed, because it's amazing what she did. And she was known as the Angel of Anzio. She refused to leave the tents when they were getting bombarded. All the other medical teams ran out, went into the bunkers. She stayed in there with one of the walking wounded and said, let's get every one of these GIs on the ground just to try to keep them alive. And that's when the artillery piece went off and struck her in the chest. But then she continued. And then she said, okay, this isn't good. We're still going to get hit. Then she personally helped to evacuate every single one of these wounded soldiers into the bunkers. She dies 66 days later, and on her 25th birthday, her family receives her death notice up in northern Wisconsin. She passed. Currently, Senator Baldwin and Senator Johnson are both taking under consideration that her Silver Star be upgraded to a Medal of Honor. She would be only one of 2 women in the history of the United States military to receive the Medal of Honor. And if you have any contacts with either of those offices, let's keep encouraging that. And not just because she was a female who did what she did. I'm telling you, I've read so many Medal of Honor citations, and what she did not only exceeds a lot of those Medal of Honors. During World War II, as a woman, you could not receive the Medal of Honor, and she was in a medical unit. That has all changed, and that can get upgraded. This is our transition to Chuck. And I met Chuck a few months back, and I'm blown away. Next year is the theme for the War Memorial is POW MIA. We'll be working on building the first Wisconsin search database to talk about all the Wisconsin POWs and MIAs. MIAs are exactly the project that Chuck is working on with his team, and we are looking to coordinate and collaborate on this because on January 27th will be the 50th anniversary of the Paris Peace Accords and the initiation of the Vietnam vets starting to come home. So we want to bring that to here to continue to tell that story and be partnership with Chuck and his team at the UW program. So Chuck, thank you so much, and let's make this happen.
First off, I want to say thank you for allowing me to come here and speak. This is outreach that can hit family members who have missing, so if they do, please have them reach out to us. As stated, I'm Charles Konsitzke. I go by Chuck. I'm the team lead for the UWMI Recovery and Identification Project. Our mission is that UWMIRP honors the sacrifice of our brave Americans who have paid the ultimate price for our freedom. Our primary mission is to recover missing service members from any conflict, but our primary focus is World War II and on. We are working on Civil War era cases as we speak. Who are we? We're a blend of faculty, staff, students, not just in the UW-Madison system. This is a statewide issue. So we have faculty and students from UW-Milwaukee as well as from UW-Oshkosh. But we are a kind of a melting pot of minds, which I'll talk a little bit more about here in a little bit. And then also we have volunteers, internal and external, as well as family members that we work with repeatedly on their cases as well as other cases. So as I stated, we're a team of faculty, staff, and students. These are some of the pictures of us in the field performing a recovery mission. And then in 2015, we were founded. Following the identification of PFC Lawrence Gordon in 2013, 2014, which we helped a civilian researcher on their case, which really opened my eyes to the situation that we had. I was not aware that we had 82,000 missing at that time. But independently, we performed the recovery mission of Frank Fazekas, whom I'll talk about here in a little bit, in 2016, which we kind of relate ourselves to the 32nd. We spearheaded our objective where we can show how academia can play a role in recovery missions as well. Because at that moment in time, only DoD was performing recovery missions, and they were only recovering roughly 64 MIAs per year. When you have 82,000, there's some inefficiencies. From that point forward, we've had 4 successful recovery missions, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, and then we were delayed because of COVID until this summer. And then a scouting mission just here in 2020 in Poland, which I'll talk about in a little bit. We're located in the UW Biotechnology Center because what is the final answer rate? DNA. There's a reason why we're in the biotechnology because of using family reference samples to confirm our findings and move research forward with technology, just not genomic, all types of technologies. So if you're ever in Madison, come visit the War Room. It'd be a great tour for you guys to learn about what we're doing and some of the projects that we're working on. So these are the 3 heroes that we've brought home thus far. As I stated, PFC Lawrence Gordon was our first recover in 2012, 2013. Frank Fazekas was the first academic project, which we moved forward in partnership with DOD. And then second, Lieutenant Walter B. Stone was our third recovery mission, which DPA finally partnered in and started funding projects. Just to give you a scale, in 2016, Frank Fazekas was our recovery. We're the first academic partner with DOD. Right now, they have 60. So you can see the numbers have increased by this new approach of using academia and NGOs. A little bit about PFC Lawrence Gordon. Here's some of the stats, but I'll tell you the difficulties of cases. PFC Lawrence Gordon was a Canadian who was working in Montana when the war broke out, joined the US military, was killed in action in northern France, was misidentified, buried as an unknown German soldier in a German cemetery in France. This was a very long case. The civilian researcher did an outstanding job. We went there, worked with their FBI agency, which is INPS. We extracted the DNA, looked at the ontology reports, everything looked good. We confirmed with family members. We flew him into O'Hare, had him escorted up to Madison, performed the forensic anthropology, and that was our first successful mission. Whenever I talk about it, I still get goosebumps because it really did change the whole process of MI recovery. Fazekas case. First Lieutenant Frank Fazekas was killed on P-47, probably one of my favorite planes of World War II. Some of you may or may not know, but it's called, it's nicknamed the Jug. It's kind of like a Harley Davidson, so Milwaukee. But Frank was killed they were returning from scouting mission just before D-Day. Frank's son at that time when he perished was only 6 months of age. This was our first case, so when I reached out to the son, Frank Fazekas, I informed him of the importance of this mission, but I wanted to get his blessing to move his father's case forward. Luckily, he was a Vietnam vet himself, a pilot. He understood this, and he agreed to this mission. So we recovered Frank Fazekas in 2016-27, and I've got some images up there. But the one in the bottom right, you can see an older gentleman to the left. Frank Fazekas, the son, is to the right. The gentleman to the left is Mr. Marc Couche. He is a French farmer who was the eyewitness of that crash site. That Frank's plane crashed in their farm field, and he kept that he had many acres of land, but he sold everything off when he retired from his farm, but he kept that small plot because he wanted that service member recovered. He was 84 when we arrived. So there's two types of closures when we're talking about closures. We've got family closure with recoveries. We've got eyewitness closures. It impacted Mr. Marcouche extremely because he was 8 years old. He knew what those soldiers were doing, liberating their country. I'll also add, every day, we were working in the field. We worked 6 days a week, 10 to 12 hours a day. We move about 300, per mission, we move about 360 meters of soil and sift through it. So he allowed us to eat in his back porch every day on their patio. We're filthy. It's Flanders mud. When it rains, it's like peanut butter. He didn't care. You guys eat here every day, and every day he brought out chocolate. And after a week, I'm like, the kids are eating your chocolate, or the students, I should say. I shouldn't say kids, so I apologize. I said, you shouldn't bring out chocolate. He goes, oh, no. That's what we received the first day we saw the GIs. So you can see how that still impacts them to this day. And then when typically DOD doesn't allow family members to a site, once I confirmed the site by the M2, the machine gun, they have serial numbers that I confirmed that was Frank's plane. I invited the son to the site. I may get a little emotional because when you see a family member, the son who's never met his father, come to his site, you can see the reason why the flame keeps burning below us to keep these missions moving forward. But when Mr. Marcouche met Frank Fazekas, the son, that was even more powerful. So with the success of Fazekas, DOD started onboarding more academic partners. The following year, which was 2018 or 2017, they had 6. And then in 2018, we took on Walter B. Stone's case, and then they had 13 that year. Walter B. Stone, just to show you the compassion of our European fellows who are in recovery, was his crash site was in the middle of a national forest, a gated national forest, which was of royalty land where nobody can go. Only on a specific day they can enter and hike through it. They knew our mission. They opened the gates. They took down a whole line of trees because we're 200 meters in. Whatever we needed, they allowed us to have. Every country that I've worked with, Belgium, Poland, France, it's very spiritual, I'd have to say, because of the compassion that they have for our service members, even to this day for our service members. So with our project, I don't have state funding, I don't have UW funding. This is all driven by heart. I have a full-time job. This is my humble project. All the people who work on this commit a lot of time. And we accept donations. One of the cases that we've been working on, we've been working on about 32 Wisconsin cases at this moment. But this is one example of one of them. I just sent a team of 3 to Poland here in October to investigate a crash site. When you're investigating a crash site, there's more than one loss. With this plane, there are 10. So that Wisconsin right there has expanded to 10 MIAs now we're investigating. Then you have to investigate the incident because each crash has a story that can help each other, which now expanded to 3 crash sites, which is now 23 MIAs we're investigating. So one Wisconsinite has expanded to 23, and you can see you have to have the full story to be able to recover, because it's a forensic case. This is a cold case. We are investigating cold cases. So we want to be sure that we know that we're taking every pathway correctly. So Poland, October 2022, this has now moved to the next phase, which is ground penetrating radar, confirming our findings. And with that, next summer, more than likely, we'll be transitioned into recovery mission. The impact. How many of you been to the Ardennes American Cemetery in Belgium? I'd say if you haven't been there, go there. We have 5,317 individuals buried there. In 2019, on the missing tablets, we had 463. To the left of their name are rosettes when they're found. At that moment in time, there were only 12 individuals found out of the 463. 2 of them are from our project. So you can see we're making an impact. So the Wisconsin objective is with over 80,000 U.S. service members missing. Of Wisconsin, there are over 1,500 missing at this moment in time. And those are primary cases, but every MI case is important to us. These are the individuals that are missing and where they resided in the state of Wisconsin. You can see there is a large population down here in Milwaukee, but it is throughout the state of Wisconsin. That's why I said this is not just the Madison-Dane County project. It is a statewide project. That's why we work with all the universities. And bridging students with military. A lot of students come from a non-military background. So when we're in the field, I always have a veteran on the team. We're out in the field 6 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day, sifting through buckets and buckets of soil. No better time to ask the question, well, why did you join the military? Why are you patriotic? Why did you do what you did? It gives this good bridging of understanding of why people do what they do. And then education, influencing people's lives through investigating, composing, and giving insight, and especially closure. Here's some of the reasons why UW-Madison is a good hub for this project. A broad range of academics, military connections, Camp Randall, the Robinson Library, and then campus ROTC and student veterans. And then the project teaches problem solving and leadership skills. We transition the students through every point while we're in the field, so they experience every single aspect of leadership, communications, logistics. And then we're helping train the next generation of leaders. From our group of students, 2 are now pilots with the U.S. Air Force. 1 is a police officer here in Milwaukee. It's just the expansion of civil service and leadership. And then the Wisconsin idea. So we're driven to solve a monumental problem. You can see on the upper left, the map of Wisconsin. The map on the bottom right is where they're located. But every day that goes by, we're losing eyewitnesses. My eyewitness for my current project in Belgium passed away here in March. It was very hard for me because we had a close relationship. He was committed to this case that I've been working on in Belgium. Can't disclose because we haven't closed it yet, and we don't want to give family members a false hope. But every day counts at this moment in time, especially for World War II. Vietnam, we're working cases. The difficulty that we're having there is the environment is changing quickly. So we need to move quickly on those cases. So thank you. If you have questions, we'll be here.
Thank you for your presentation, gentlemen. And Chuck, what is the background of the students that you take out there in the most part?
That's okay. Okay. So we have it's a blend of students. Some are historians, some are anthropologists, business school, economics, med school, MBAs. I don't care what their background is because I know they're committed to the mission. And that's the beauty of our group. It's a melting pot of knowledge. So we always have these aha moments, and those are the things that move us forward even further. So there is no requirement for background as long as they can shovel, move buckets, and do a lot of historical research. These students are committed.
Thank you so very much for this work. I am curious, I think I saw on one slide where the funding was provided through donations in Poland, but where does the funding come from for all of this work?
That's a great question. At this moment, we don't have any funding. It's predominantly donations from like the VFW, DAV, and they're relatively small. So it's a lot of. I won't be submitting a reimbursement for my drive down here because it'll come out of my budget. So yeah.
So we're working closely with the state commander for the VFW for this POWMIA project for next year. And so what we're doing as a fellow veteran organizations is collaborating to say this is very important to us and we have to keep this going, as well as raising awareness to the project. So it's coming through multiple sites and we're trying to work with them to assist.
A very impressive report, especially coming from Madison. I'm a bi-coaster, meaning I have one leg in Lake Michigan, one leg in Lake Mendota, having lived most of my life in Madison. As you know, the military is not the most popular entity on the Madison campus. And what you talked about in terms of the Wisconsin idea and the value of mixing students with veterans to hear that narrative, as more and more students don't have that narrative. If you had one wish for the Madison campus as it relates to the administration, student government, student communications, what would that wish be?
Understand the impact what this project is doing, not just for the state of Wisconsin, but the nation as well as internationally. You can see I'm a humble Wisconsinite myself, so I don't ask for much.
Well, it looks like it's a conclusion, unless there's any others. Thank you so much, and Chuck, we look forward to really making this work.